Alright, this is exactly what they were begging for. Now, look, when it comes to Cardi B, before we even open this whole can of internet nonsense, let me just say something up front, because everybody has been trying to bury this woman for 3 days straight over one single bar in one single unreleased song snippet, and if that doesn't tell you the state of comment sections in 2026, I don't know what will. So leave a like right now if you're tired of watching a grown, Grammy-winning artist get dragged into a courtroom every time she opens her mouth, and if you hype the video up on top of that, you literally double the reach of this conversation and you also double the odds of the algorithm sending it to every keyboard linguist who thinks they can decode a Barty verse better than Barty herself. Because that, my friends, is what we're actually dealing with today, and I promise you, by the time we get to the end of this, you are going to see the whole play from the top of the field, laid out so clean that you will never be able to look at a Cardi B headline the same way again. Now, the good part first, because I want to be fair. The snippet Cardi B dropped looks incredible. The visual is clean, the styling is expensive, the confidence is dripping off the screen, she looks like a woman who knows exactly what room she walked into and knew where every camera was. That part, nobody can debate. Even the loudest hater under her post had to type, "She looks good, but," and it was that opened the door to the circus we are now standing in the middle of. Because the second the snippet dropped, the comments section did what the comments section always does when Cardi B is involved. It turned into a full forensic linguistics lab, staffed entirely by people who couldn't spell forensic if you gave them the first 6 letters, but who somehow all felt qualified to file a federal indictment against a 15-second video clip. So let's rewind to the actual bar, because this whole storm starts with one line. Cardi B, over the snippet, delivers, a N-word, "Can't trap me, I won't keep him." That's the line. That is the entire crime scene. And within about 45 minutes of the clip going live, the internet had convinced itself she said, "I won't keep it," as in the baby, as in the pregnancy, as in a full, loaded confession that she was announcing something in a rap bar that no reasonable woman would ever announce in a rap bar. And that's the setup. That's the misdirect. That's the whole scam. Because I am telling you right now, once you hear how this narrative got engineered, you are going to look at your own timeline different for the rest of the week, and you are going to see the pattern the second the next fake outrage cycle starts. And it will start. Because it always does. See, here's the thing about a Cardi B lyric controversy, it never stays a lyric controversy. It becomes a referendum. It becomes a tribunal. It becomes a stage where every person who has ever resented her success gets to walk up to the microphone and pretend they're just concerned about grammar. That's the routine. That's the recycled bit. That's the same tired play that every off-duty comment section anthropologist has been running since Cardi B first cracked the top of the charts. And the person who benefits from that routine the most is not Cardi B, obviously, but it is also not the fans, and it is definitely not hip-hop. It is the whole third-party ecosystem of clout accounts that need Cardi B to be a mess in order for their engagement graphs to survive. So let's actually walk through what happened, because the receipts here are wild, and once you see them stacked, the picture stops being ambiguous. Cardi drops the snippet. Fans react. Within the hour, the top comment on every repost is some variation of, "Sis, you got trapped 4 times already, sit down." Now, I want to pause on that for a second, because that comment right there is the entire skeleton of the manufactured outrage. It presupposes a bar Cardi B did not say. It presupposes an intent she did not deliver. And it presupposes a life summary of a whole woman based on a 15-second clip. But because the joke was clean, because it hit the rhythm of internet humor, it spread, and once it spread, everybody louder than the truth got to run with it, and everybody quieter than the mob got drowned out before they could finish typing a correction. And that is the play. That is the actual mechanism. Not what Cardi B said. Not what Cardi B meant. But what people wanted her to have said, so they could deliver the punchline they already had cocked and loaded in the chamber. Because let's be real for a second, the gotcha was pre-written. The joke was pre-baked. All they needed was a bar close enough to sound like the setup, and the second Cardi B rapped anything near it, the whole comment section apparatus lit up like a switchboard. It didn't matter whether the bar actually said what they claimed it said. It only mattered that the bar was close enough to justify the joke they had already decided to tell. Now, look, I could sit here and give you the whole monologue about how Cardi B has been misheard, misquoted, and misreported more than any female rapper of her generation, and I could probably write a full dissertation on it, but that's not the point of the video. The point of the video is that Cardi B finally decided she was done letting the mob write her script for her, so she hopped on live, and what she said next is the reason we are having this conversation at all. Because Cardi B did not just correct the record. Cardi B walked up to the microphone, took a breath, and dismantled the entire premise of the outrage in real time, and she did it without a publicist, without a script, and without a single note card in her hand. Let's play a piece of it. Barty, in her own words, said, and I'm paraphrasing tight because we don't need to sit through the whole rant, she said, first of all, she knows exactly what she said. She said stop telling her somebody wrote her bars. She said the line was, N-word, can't trap me, I won't keep him, meaning the man, not the pregnancy, meaning she will walk. She said, and I quote as close as I can, that a baby ain't trapping her, that she'll take the kid and go, that she'll take the house and the car and the cash and the ring, and that she is tired of people acting slow on purpose. She said she is done with the crowd that pretends to misunderstand her just to have an excuse to drag her. Alright, that's enough of the clip. You get the picture. You don't need the whole rant. What I will say, and this is important, is that Cardi B is not spinning here. She is not backpedaling. She is not doing that PR two-step you see when a rapper realizes they said something they shouldn't have. She is actually explaining the bar with more clarity than the bar itself delivered, which, by the way, is a totally separate conversation we're going to get to, because, I won't keep him, versus, I won't keep it, is a phonetic hair's breadth apart in Barty's cadence, and the confusion is real, even if the outrage isn't earned. And that phonetic overlap, that's the entire hinge this whole story swings on. Cardi B compresses her syllables. That's her signature. That has always been her signature. And that signature is exactly what got weaponized against her this week. But that's the lie. That's the smokescreen. That's where this whole thing becomes a job for the exact same online community that has spent the better part of a decade waiting for Cardi B to slip so they could jump. And I want you to actually sit with that for a second. Because when we talk about the way certain celebrities get treated by the modern comments section, we are not talking about criticism. Criticism is fine. Criticism is healthy. Criticism sharpens artists. What we are talking about here is something else entirely. What we are talking about is a coordinated, low-grade, high-volume campaign to reframe every single move Cardi B makes as evidence of a character flaw. And once you notice it, you cannot unnotice it, because it is running on every platform, every day, in every timeline that so much as brushes against her name. I call it Cardi B Comprehension Collapse, the phenomenon where an audience physically cannot process a Cardi B lyric on its own terms, and instead reroutes the interpretation through their pre-existing resentment of her existence. Because I'm telling you, if any other rapper on this planet delivered that exact bar, a baby won't trap me, I won't keep him, the comments section would have called it a female empowerment anthem. They would have made TikTok edits. They would have quoted it in captions. They would have printed it on t-shirts. They would have looped the audio on 1,000 thirst trap reels. But because Cardi B said it, suddenly the entire internet becomes a panel of family court judges, and every armchair analyst becomes a licensed forensic phonologist with a stack of imaginary credentials. And listen, I don't say that lightly. I say that because you can literally test it. Pull up any of the male rappers who have delivered nearly identical bars over the past 3 years, and watch how those bars got received. They got clipped. They got praised. They got called hard. Nobody sat in the comments interrogating whether the rapper had, in fact, ever kept a child in the past, using that as evidence that the bar was invalid. Nobody. But because it is Cardi B, and because Cardi B has, in fact, had children, and because Cardi B has, in fact, lived the exact kind of public romantic life that gives strangers the illusion of authority, the bar became a Rorschach test, and everybody projected their own bitterness right onto it. That is the actual, honest, receipt-level truth of this whole cycle, and if you're being intellectually honest with yourself, you know it too. Now, look, I want to be honest with you, because I refuse to be one of those commentators who just picks a side and grinds it into the ground. The bar itself, I hear both readings. I really do. If you listen to it cold, without context, I won't keep him, and I won't keep it sit right on top of each other in Barty's flow. She's a rapper who compresses syllables. She always has been. It's part of her signature. So the confusion is real. The confusion is not manufactured. What is manufactured is the leap from, I misheard a bar, to, this woman is announcing a pregnancy decision in a snippet. That leap, that's where the internet lost the plot. That's where the receipts stopped matching. That's where Cardi B Comprehension Collapse kicked in full force. And once that leap gets made, no amount of clarification can walk it back, because the mob has already invested emotionally in the wrong version. And here's where it gets even worse. Because the second Cardi B hopped on Live to actually clear the air, which, by the way, is what every commenter always claims to want, just explain yourself, sis, the same people who demanded the explanation immediately pivoted to attacking the explanation. Suddenly it was, she's yelling too much. Suddenly it was, she's on live too often. Suddenly it was, money doesn't buy happiness, look at her defending herself. That's not criticism. That's not analysis. That's a moving goalpost, and the goalposts are being moved on purpose, because the target was never the lyric. The target was Cardi B herself. And the goalpost keeps sliding because if it ever stopped sliding, somebody in the mob would have to admit they were wrong, and admitting you were wrong is not the sport they signed up for. Let me put it to you this way. If Cardi B ignores the noise, the internet says she's arrogant. If Cardi B responds to the noise, the internet says she's insecure. If Cardi B posts on live, the internet says she's terminally online. If Cardi B stays off Live, the internet says she's hiding. If Cardi B goes to the club, the internet says she's a bad mother. If Cardi B stays home with her kids, the internet says she's washed. If Cardi B raps hard, the internet says the bars were ghostwritten. If Cardi B raps soft, the internet says she's not really a rapper. There is no move. There is no correct answer. There is only the game, and the game is rigged, and the players on the other side of the board have been playing it against Cardi B since 2017. And that brings us to the second thing she went off about on that Live, because it wasn't just the lyric. Cardi B also went in on the crowd that has been dragging her every time she posts a club video. And listen, I understand why she snapped. Because the argument these people make is one of the laziest arguments in the entire pop culture playbook. She has 4 kids, why is she in the club? As if being a mother and being a woman with a nightlife are somehow mutually exclusive categories. As if Cardi B, who is currently one of the most touring, most working, most visible artists on the planet, cannot decompress by, God forbid, spending her own money in a section she paid for herself, in a room she rented, on a night she earned. Cardi B laid it out with math. She said if she's spending 10 grand on a section, 8 grand on bottles, 2 grand on hookah, she is going to dance from the moment she walks in to the moment she walks out. And honestly, tell me what part of that logic is wrong. If you drop $20,000 in a room, you are not standing against a wall watching other people enjoy themselves. That is not how any of this works. That is not how any nightlife has ever worked. But because it's Cardi B, we get to relitigate her parenting license every single time she does a split on an Instagram story. It's exhausting. And it's fake. And the same people who spend their entire weekend policing her club footage would not last one full workweek doing what Cardi B does for a living. Now, here's where I have to be even more direct, because I think this is the layer people are missing. The reason the comments section has been so aggressive on Cardi B this week is because Cardi B is right now sitting in the middle of one of the most inconvenient career arcs for her critics that we have ever seen. Because think about it. She's touring internationally. She's dropping snippets that are trending on their own merit. She's got the personal life headlines going, the ongoing Offset situation, the Stefon Diggs speculation, the pregnancy conversations that have been floating around for months. And she is doing all of it while still being one of the most quotable, most memeable, most engaging artists in the entire streaming era. That is inconvenient. That is unwelcome news for the crowd that has been predicting her downfall since her first #1 record. So what do you do when a woman keeps winning and you don't want her to? You go looking for a phonetic mishearing in a snippet, and you build a scandal around it. That's the play. That's the whole play. And they almost got away with it, until Cardi B did what Cardi B has always done, which is pick up the phone, hit live, and set the record straight in language even the slowest reader in the group chat can follow. Because Cardi B does not need a translator. Cardi B does not need a media coach. Cardi B has been her own translator, her own coach, her own PR team, and her own defense attorney since day one, and the results speak for themselves. And you know what makes this whole thing even more absurd? The bar in question, once you actually decode it, is one of the most self-aware bars on the snippet. Because Cardi B is essentially saying, and I want you to hear this, she is saying, no man can use a child as leverage on me. She is saying, you will not tie me to you by biology. She is saying, if it is over, and no baby is going to become a hostage in the negotiation of my freedom. That is, if we're being honest, a mature bar. That is a bar written by a woman who has clearly lived enough to know that keeping a person and keeping a relationship are two different things. Barty is drawing a line between the child, whom she will always keep, and the man, whom she will absolutely leave, and the fact that the internet inverted that reading tells you exactly whose comprehension is collapsing. Now, look, I know some of you are going to say, but the bar is written badly. If it needs this much explanation, maybe it's not a good bar. And okay, fine, that's a fair take. That is actually a fair criticism. There is a real conversation to be had about whether the line lands cleanly on first listen. There is a real conversation to be had about whether Cardi B's writing has evolved in a direction that leans too heavily on personality and not enough on precision. That is a legitimate conversation, and I would happily sit and have it. But that is not the conversation the internet is having. The internet is not saying, this bar is underwritten. The internet is saying, this bar reveals a moral failing, and those two conversations are galaxies apart. One is craft criticism. The other is character assassination dressed up in punctuation. And speaking of character assassination, let's talk about the surgery angle, because Cardi B went in on that too, and it's another perfect example of the game. Every time Cardi B posts and looks slightly different than she did in the last picture, the same accounts descend into the replies with the same accusation. She got surgery. She got another BBL. She got lipo. She got a tummy tuck. She got. Cardi B, on live, said something that a lot of people are ignoring. She said she has been open about her procedures. She said she's had 2 lipos. She said she's had an ass reduction. She said she's not hiding it. And she pointed out something so obvious it should end the whole conversation, which is, when exactly is she supposed to be having all this secret surgery? She's been on tour. She's been in Paris. She's been in London. She's been in Italy. She's been posting weekly. There is no recovery window in her calendar. But the accusation persists, because the accusation is not about the surgery. The accusation is about the resentment. And I have to name it, because if I don't name it, we're going to keep spinning in the same circle. What Cardi B is dealing with is a very specific brand of online scrutiny that gets applied disproportionately to women who came from where she came from. It's a scrutiny that says, you are not allowed to enjoy your money the way rich people enjoy their money, because you are not one of us. It's a scrutiny that says, you are not allowed to age without our permission. It's a scrutiny that says, you are not allowed to speak plainly, because plain speech is uncouth. That scrutiny is not neutral. That scrutiny is a filter, and Cardi B has been trying to broadcast through that filter for 8 full years, and every year the filter gets tighter and every year Cardi B just gets louder. And that's where the players in this whole drama become really important, because the coordinated part of this, the part that isn't just random keyboard warriors, is the network of gossip pages, screenshot accounts, and pot-stirrer commentators who make their entire monthly rent off of Cardi B misreadings. Every time Cardi B says a sentence, there are 20 accounts already refreshing their drafts, ready to clip her, caption her, misquote her, and monetize her. That is not incidental. That is an ecosystem. That is an industry. And Cardi B, unlike most artists in her class, has never played nice with that ecosystem, which is exactly why the ecosystem never plays nice with her. It's not personal to them. It's business. And that's what makes it worse, because business always outlives a grudge. So when Cardi B says on live, y'all been coming at me for 2 days, and I'm about to come at y'all, because who the hell do y'all think y'all playing with? That is not a woman having a breakdown. That is a woman finally addressing the ecosystem directly. That is a woman saying the quiet part out loud. That is a woman who has been misheard and misrepresented enough times that she has decided to stop letting the misreading stand as the final word. And you know what? Good. Because the alternative is that Cardi B goes silent, and if Cardi B goes silent, the ecosystem writes her story for her, and that story will not be flattering, and it will not be true, and by the time anybody circles back to correct it, the wrong version will already be canon. Now, here's the part one really want you to hold on to, because this is where the whole picture snaps into focus. Cardi B is currently doing something almost none of her peers are doing right now, which is participating in her own narrative in real time. She is not letting a publicist ghostwrite her personality. She is not letting a rollout strategy sand down her edges. She is going on live, in real time, and saying exactly what she thinks, and the internet is treating that authenticity like a bug when it's actually the entire feature. Every rapper right now is being told to be more curated, more calculated, more managed. Cardi B, in 2026, is going in the opposite direction, and she's doing it while the entire comment section apparatus is trying to punish her for it. That takes a level of confidence most of her peers cannot even fake, let alone deliver on demand. And I want to be clear about something, because I know the concession is coming, and I'm going to make it myself before somebody in the replies makes it for me. The bar is fine. It is not her best bar. It is not a career-defining bar. If we're being real, a N-word, can't trap me, I won't keep him, is a solid mid-tier Barty bar. It's not Bodak Yellow. It's not the opening verse of Enough, Miami. It's not the flex from Like What, Freestyle. It is a fine, punchy, personality-driven bar that would have passed unnoticed on any other rapper's snippet. But it landed on a Cardi B snippet, and because it landed on a Cardi B snippet, it became a scandal. That is the runner-up position of her own narrative, and Cardi B refuses to accept it, and honestly, she is right to refuse it, because nothing about that positioning is fair, factual, or earned. Which brings me to what I actually think is happening, and stay with me here, because this is the piece nobody is putting together. Cardi B is being framed, over and over, as the runner-up of her own narrative. Every time she does something, the story becomes about the reaction to the thing, not the thing itself. She drops a snippet, the story becomes the misheard bar. She goes on live, the story becomes, why is she yelling? She goes to the club, the story becomes, she should be home. She stays home, the story becomes, she's inactive. No matter what Cardi B actually does, the ecosystem repositions her as the secondary character in a discourse she should be leading. That is not accidental. That is deliberate. That is a narrative structure designed to keep her hands off her own steering wheel. But here's the thing, and this is where I get to say what I actually believe. Cardi B is not the runner-up of anything. Cardi B is the reason the discourse exists in the first place. There is no snippet controversy without a snippet. There is no comment section circus without a comment worth arguing about. There is no ecosystem of Barty commentary without Barty generating content worth commenting on. She is the sun in this solar system, and every hater, every clipper, every screenshot page, every misquoter, they are all just planets orbiting her heat. And they know it. That's why they scream so loud. Because they know that the second they stop screaming, they lose their proximity to the light. That's not a metaphor. That is the actual economic model of the entire secondary market that has grown up around Cardi B's career. Now, listen, I could sit here and drag every fake account, every clip farm, every gossip page one by one, and honestly, don't tempt me, because I've got a whole list, but that's not the point of this video. The point of this video is to tell you what actually happened, why it happened, and what the pattern actually looks like, so that the next time Cardi B drops a snippet, you don't fall for the pre-baked outrage. Because I promise you, the pre-baked outrage is coming. The next snippet will drop. The next bar will be misheard. The next live will be misinterpreted. And the same critics, keyboard warriors, comment section coroners, and clout chasers will run the exact same play they ran this week, because that's the only play they know, and they've built entire followings around never learning a new one. And here's what really gets me. Cardi B, on her own live, offered the internet a lesson in reading comprehension for free. She literally sat there and walked them through the bar, walked them through her intent, walked them through the metaphor. And the response was not, oh, I misheard, my bad. The response was, you explained it too aggressively. That's not a real objection. That is what people say when they don't want to admit they were wrong. And every time Cardi B has offered clarity, the goalposts have moved to tone. It's never the content. It's always the delivery. Because if the ecosystem admits it misread the content, the ecosystem has to admit Cardi B was right, and admitting Cardi B is right is the one thing this specific comment section economy is structurally incapable of doing, because admitting she is right would deflate the entire outrage industry overnight. So where does that leave us? It leaves us here, with a snippet that was actually pretty good, a bar that was actually pretty solid, a woman who actually explained herself pretty clearly, and a comment section that still refuses to update its priors. That is the whole story. That is the entire arc of the week. And the fact that we are still discussing it 3 days later tells you exactly whose attention Cardi B still commands, whether her critics like it or not. Because think about it, if she was truly irrelevant, if she was truly washed, if she was truly whatever the mob keeps insisting she is, the mob would have moved on by now. But the mob has not moved on. The mob is still there, screaming into the void, 3 days in, and every scream is free advertising for the exact snippet they claim to hate. Now, before I close this out, I want to give you the piece that I think will actually age the best. Because 10 years from now, when somebody writes the definitive book on female rap in this era, and they get to the Cardi B chapter, this snippet cycle is going to be one of the case studies. Not because the bar was legendary, but because the bar was ordinary, and the reaction to the ordinary bar was extraordinary. It's going to be studied as a moment when the internet showed its whole hand about how it treats a certain kind of woman, and it's going to be studied as a moment when that woman looked directly into the camera and refused to play along. That refusal, right there, is the moment. That refusal is the story. That refusal is the thing that historians will point to when they explain how Cardi B outlasted an entire generation of critics who were absolutely certain she wouldn't. And listen, I know Cardi B doesn't need me to defend her. Barty has been defending herself since the days of love and hip-hop, and she has been better at it than the professional talkers ever were. But I do think somebody needs to say plainly what is actually happening, because if we let the ecosystem write the recap is going to be, Cardi B had a meltdown on live. And the truth is, Cardi B had a moment of clarity on live. Those are two completely different sentences, and the sentence you believe depends entirely on which side of the light you are standing on. One version paints her as unstable. The other version paints her as unbothered. Only one of them is supported by the actual footage. So here's what I want you to take away from this whole thing, and then I promise I'll shut up. Cardi B did not confess to anything. Cardi B did not slip up. Cardi B did not accidentally reveal anything about a pregnancy. Cardi B rapped a bar about not being trapped by a man. She was misheard. She was misrepresented. She was misquoted. She corrected the record. And the ecosystem, instead of accepting the correction, doubled down on the misread, because the misread was more profitable than the truth. That is the entire play. That is the whole game. And now that you see it, you cannot unsee it. And once you cannot unsee it, you become a much harder person to sell fake outrage to, which is exactly the audience Cardi B deserves and exactly the audience the ecosystem is desperately trying to prevent from existing. The next time somebody in your group chat drops a screenshot of a Cardi B gotcha, I want you to ask them one question. Ask them, did you actually watch the live, or did you just read the caption on the repost? Because I guarantee you, 9 out of 10 times, they read the caption. They did not watch the source. They did not hear the bar. They did not consume the clarification. They consumed the discourse about the clarification. And that is how this whole engine keeps running, on a diet of second-hand outrage that never touches the primary source. That is the whole design of the modern gossip cycle. Everybody is reacting to everybody else's reaction, and nobody is actually going back to the original tape. And here is where I have to zoom out even further, because I think this Cardi B moment is a microcosm of something much bigger happening in the culture right now. We are living in an era where the reaction to a piece of art has fully overtaken the piece of art itself as the primary product. Cardi B's snippet is not the product anymore, in the ecosystem sense. The reaction to Cardi B's snippet is the product. The reaction to the reaction is the second product. The reaction to the reaction to the reaction is the third product. And somewhere down that chain, the original artist gets flattened into an accessory for a discourse she did not sign up for. That is what Cardi B is pushing back against. That is what her whole live was really about. She was not just correcting a lyric misread. She was refusing to be turned into raw material for a discourse she does not own. And once you frame it that way, you see why the mob got so mad. Because the mob was not mad about the bar. The mob was mad because Cardi B, in real time, tried to take back ownership of her own narrative, and that is the one thing the ecosystem cannot allow. If Cardi B owns her own narrative, the ecosystem does not get to speak for her. If Cardi B speaks for herself, every screenshot account loses its monopoly on interpretation. If Cardi B says clearly what she meant, every clip farm loses its excuse to run a fake caption. That is not a small thing. That is the entire economic foundation of the accounts that live off of her. And that, my friends, is why this is not going to stop. This is not the last time Cardi B will get dragged for a bar she did not say. This is not the last time the ecosystem will manufacture an outrage cycle around a Bardi lyric. This is not the last time you will see a comment section pretend to have graduate-level phonetics training just to justify a pre-existing resentment. This is going to keep happening, because the incentives are still in place, and until the incentives change, the behavior will not change. But now that you see it, you get to opt out. Now that you see it, you get to be one of the people who does not fall for the trap. Now that you see it, you get to be the one in the group chat who actually plays the source, watches the live, and hears the bar for what it is instead of what the caption told you it was. I want to be honest about one more thing before I close, because I don't want anybody to think I'm just running defense for Cardi B for the sake of running defense. If Cardi B ever actually said something wild, would say so. If Cardi B ever actually confessed to something on a snippet, I would cover it accurately. That is not what happened here. What happened here is a woman rapped a bar about her romantic autonomy, and the internet decided to hear something completely different because hearing what she actually said was less exciting than hearing what they wanted her to say. That is not a Cardi B problem. That is an internet problem. And Cardi B just happens to be the woman standing in the middle of it this week. And that is where I have to leave it, because if I keep going, this video turns into a 2-hour documentary, and honestly, at this rate, maybe it should. But for now, let this be the version that gets on the timeline. Let this be the version that pushes back. Let this be the version that says, on the record, in daylight, that Cardi B was not confessing to anything, that the bar was not what the mob said it was, that the live was not a meltdown, and that the ecosystem trying to sell you a different version of events has been selling you the same version of events about this woman for 8 years running, and it is time somebody said it in plain English on a platform loud enough to matter. So tell me what you actually think. Was the bar clear or was the bar clumsy? Did you hear him or did you hear it? Do you think Cardi B is being dragged unfairly, or do you think she brought the drag on herself? Was the live a clarification or an overreaction? And what do you think this whole cycle says about how the internet treats women who came up the way Cardi B came up? I want to hear all of it. Drop the take. Drop the receipts. Drop the counter-argument. I read them all, I hype them all, and the best ones I might even quote in the next video, because we are absolutely doing a follow-up on this once the full song drops, and trust me, when the full song drops, the receipts will finally read themselves. While you're down there, hit the like, hype the video, subscribe if you haven't yet, and turn the notifications on, because the second Cardi B drops anything else, a snippet, a caption, a live, a look, we are covering it in real time, and you are going to want to be in the room when that conversation happens. And if you like this breakdown, go watch the last one I did on the Offset diss track situation, because that video sets up half of the context for what we just talked about, and it puts the whole arc into the frame it deserves. Trust me, you're going to want that one queued up next, because the story we just walked through does not exist without the story from that video, and the two together tell you almost everything you need to know about where Cardi B is headed for the rest of the year. Alright. That's the whole play. That's the whole read. That's the whole game laid out flat on the table. Cardi B told you what she meant. The internet told you what it wanted her to mean. And now you know exactly which one to believe. Catch you in the next one.